You'll get the raw. Come join us Mondays, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern in Studio B at revolution.radio.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning, warning.
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all! See how the trouble you've started? Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it.
Right! You tell them I'm coming! And hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me!
Revolution Radio.
Here we go, hour one. And greetings, Earth Explorers. Welcome to X Squared Radio. I'm your host, Brooks Agnew, coming to you live from an undisclosed location east of the Appalachian Mountains. This is where the past meets the future. In here, the results are always positive. We might go a little past your imagination, but have no fear, you will be safely traveling with us. We are streaming to you live with our friends at Revolution Radio and freedomslips.com, the number one listener-supported network in America, possibly in the world. We're also streaming to you live on video, on Rockfin, on Rumble, on Facebook and Twitch, on DLive and Twitter, and Foxhole and YouTube. So glad to have you here tonight with us. This is a 2-hour program. We take one break at the top of the hour, and that is it. So I also want to welcome everybody in the chat room. Comfortably Numb and Kathleen Vaughn, Wah. Is it Wolf? Could be Wolf. Bob Connor is out there. Mr. Green Jeans is out there. Blue Otter's out there. Wrecking Ball is out there. Good to hear you. And also our friends at Foxhole. Sherry Pittsburgh is out there, and others will be popping in. There are a lot of people live on that platform tonight, a lot, and we appreciate all of them. So let's get to it, because we have quite a bit of news to go over and some perspective, and of course I'll be interacting with the chat room all evening. You know, what the Global Syndicate is really focused on is not stopping the spread of disinformation. They're trying to stop the spread of information. That's why we are now the mainstream media. The fake stream news you have been familiar with for a while, otherwise you wouldn't be tuned in here. But we are now have proven that we are the mainstream. We are the ones that people are coming to really get their news. And tuning in here will treat, cure, and prevent the disease of ignorance. Online platforms have been ramping up their censorship, and they catch up with us every single day. Every single week, I am informed by YouTube that they are dropping another one of my episodes from 2020 or 2021, and it's against their community standards because there's too much truth in it. We don't use an inordinate amount of profanity. We don't talk about subjects that are not absolutely factual and proven out. We don't talk politics very much. We do talk a lot of government because that's what affects everybody. But they're ramping up their censorship protocols under the banner of fighting disinformation or misinformation. And those are the exact words that they use, whether it's LinkedIn or whether it's Twitter or whether it's Facebook or whether it's YouTube, and that relates directly to Google. And those escalations always align with a narrative control agenda of this global media empire, which is a arm of the global syndicate. The global syndicate, as you know, has 4 divisions. It has the global media empire, which is basically 6 rich white guys and 3 tech giants. It is also the military arm, which right now is flexing its muscle all over the world in the form of the CCP. They're in big trouble. They're in huge trouble. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. And there's the political arm, which is the establishment party. The establishment party in the United States is made up of all the Democrats and a sizable number of Republicans as well, and independents. So the establishment party has been around since the early 1800s, 1830s, 1840s. By 1848, the DNC was formed, and they began to collect money and assert their influence on what is commonly called the two-party system, which I'm going to go back to Thomas Paine on this. There wasn't Democrats and Republicans in his day. There were traitors and there were patriots, and there are still to this day traitors and patriots by any other name. It is the same. Just the other day, we learned that Twitter has a new policy which expands its censorship practices to fight misinformation about specifically wars and other crises. We already know what happened when you tried to post medical information about COVID-19. We saw what happened. They either took your channel down altogether, or they put you in Twitter jail, or they turned you off. And we had a lot of our friends that lost their Twitter channels, lost their Facebook channels, and lost whatever was associated with Google, which in most cases was YouTube. They lost those as well. But it hasn't gone away. Even with the pending purchase of Elon Musk of Twitter, it hasn't gone away. They're expanding their censorship practices, and the Ukraine war will be the first such situation about which it will be enforcing these new censorship policies, and they're going to justify it because they stand with Ukraine. And they don't even know what that means to stand with Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine. We stand with the Ukrainian people. We stand with the ethnic Russians who live in Ukraine, who have been shelled ever since Victoria Nuland and John McCain overthrew the duly elected government of Ukraine in 2014 and began money laundering on a scale that no one has ever seen before. The board, this wrong think board, is alive and well. I know you think that the disinformation board, this governance board, got taken down. Well, no, it didn't. I mean, Nina Yankowish, she got taken down. She was forced to resign. But the board is still alive and well. And even though there are congressmen who are saying, and senators who are saying, we're never going to let this thing be funded. You're never going to get a penny. They are going to get a penny. They are going to get a penny because it's going to come from dark money. Why? Because they have to accomplish the mission. They have to accomplish the mission. And you know, sometimes government, when it has to accomplish a mission, it will go elsewhere for the money. Just think back a little bit about Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan wanted to stop the Cubans from having communist designs in South America. And there was a faction that was fighting them called the Contras. And, they wanted to stop the Sandinistas in those days. Congress wouldn't hear of it. Congress would not give Reagan the money. He had a Democrat Congress. They didn't like him. They wanted him out. They tried to obfuscate him and stop him every way that they could. But it was the mission. They had to accomplish the mission. So what did they do? They ran guns. They ran drugs. They ran illegal cash in order to fund that. And it tied in Iran at the same time. That's why it was called the Iran-Contra deal. Well, of course, the intelligence agencies discovered it, and they knew that they could impeach Ronald Reagan and get him out of office, so they went after him. Of course, all fingers pointed at Oliver North. So they said, well, we'll get Oliver North to testify. So Oliver North convinced them to give him immunity. Okay, if I'm going to testify, I want immunity. Oh, yes, absolutely. We'll give you immunity. And what happened? They put him on the stand, and he lied. He didn't tell the truth. He lied his entire time up there. He took the blame all to himself. He totally absolved. Ronald Reagan didn't know a thing about this. Nope. We did this all on our own. He didn't know anything. So Reagan was okay. Oliver North was okay because he had immunity, and the whole thing went away. Lots of people died. Lots of money came in the country. Lots of people got hooked on drugs. It didn't matter. It was all to accomplish the mission. So don't you think for a second that this disinformation governance board has gone away. It's just gone under a little bit. It's down in the mud of the swamp. The board's operations appear to have been paused pending a review which will be led by, Michael Chertoff, a virulent swamp monster and torture advocate. Its operations will likely be resumed by Monday, I would say, probably under the leadership of somebody with a lower profile who doesn't sing like Julie Andrews or make TikTok videos. And this all comes out as we bring you this news after these U.S. officials were straight up, told the press that the Biden administration has been deliberately sowing disinformation to the public using the mainstream, the fake stream press, in order to win an info war against the Kremlin. Because that's the mission. That's the mission they want to accomplish. But in stomping on the Kremlin, they're also stomping on you. And I maintain, and I will say to you first off right now tonight, this is a proxy war. The war against Russia is a proxy war. No. It's not all the little wars that are a war with Russia. That's not it at all. The war with Russia is a proxy war against you. The war with Russia is a proxy war against you. You are the enemy. Nobody seems to be calling for the social media accounts of Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals to be banned on any social media. In fact, it was recently revealed that upwards of 50% of Joe Biden's followers are bots. That's exactly how they get. Haven't you ever wondered that? When somebody tweets something and you look down and it's got like 4,300 retweets and it's a lame post. It doesn't say anything. It's gobbledygook or flat-ass false. And yet it has 4,300 retweets. That's bots. That's how it works. You see, there are huge discrepancies between what the oligarchic empire says and what it actually does regarding the issue of disinformation, because the empire, they don't have any problem with disinformation. They create it all the time. They retweet it, they like it, they echo it, they make it grow. It's information they have a problem with. It's what we are talking about right now on America Free Radio that they have a problem with. The empire is built upon propaganda and lies, and it has no problem with propaganda and lies as long as it's theirs. They're not worried about disinformation. They're worried about information, and that's what I am giving you. They're worried about journalists using the unprecedented information sharing power of the internet to reveal inconvenient facts about the largest and most murderous power structure the world has ever known. I wrote about it. I'm going to read you a chapter out of it tonight because it fits. It fits so well. I can't believe how prophetic Charma Favor was. They're worried about you finding out how you've been lied to your entire life about their world, their nation, their government, what they call their democracy. Are we dangerous to their democracy? You damn betcha we are. They're worried about people using their newly connected minds and awakened minds to decide on your own that they don't much like the status quo as it's been laid out for them. They want to own stuff. They want to be happy. They want to dream big. And they want to decide for themselves. All the safeguards they're setting up now in the quiet, in the chaos, to manipulate the flow of information are not there to eliminate lies. Far from it. They're there to eliminate truth. That's what they're there for. These people have a vested interest in keeping things dark, at least keeping things confused. And we, the people of the world, have a vested interest in shining a big inconvenient spotlight on everything truth, everything love, everything freedom and liberty. The globalist agenda, and we are seeing this in Davos as we speak, to keep things in the dark, to keep things black, to keep things soaked in blood, is at direct odds with what your agenda is to be enlightened and to be empowered. We're not being protected by a compassionate alliance of corporations and governments who want us to know the truth, obviously. We are being manipulated. We're being oppressed by an oligarchic empire. These are people who have so much money that they believe it has made them a better being than you are. That's what an oligarch is. An oligarch believes that his wealth has made him a higher being than you. You have a disease, and that disease is called scarcity. It's called poverty, and you must be kept away from them. That's why they're censoring the internet. That's why they're filling our minds with propaganda. And you see it all the time. You see these man-on-the-street interviews, like, ask them simple questions. They don't know. They don't know. They are all about these word salad things like inclusiveness and, non-binary. These are word salad words that they tear at you and they cut at you. And so what we're seeing here are triggers. We're watching what's happening as our soldiers, our officers are fighting back on our behalf. And we're seeing the triggers of this occur. The Sussman indictment was a major, major move in the right direction. We know it. We feel it. We're excited about it, but we're also fearful about it because we know that that this dark giant, it can be quite ruthless. And they often strike back in predictable ways. Just days before 2016 Clinton campaign attorney Michael Sussman met with the FBI over alleged Trump-Russia collusion, inspired by what he described as his desire to be a concerned citizen. On the payroll, yes. Being reimbursed for expenses as this private, yes. Being associated with them as a representative attorney, yes. But he was a concerned citizen. Whatever. He billed the campaign for the flash drives on which he stored the data that he presented to the Bureau. Yeah, that's a concerned citizen. Yeah, I billed my client, but I'm not really my client because I'm not really representing him or her while I'm here, but I'm here to give you what it is they employed me to do. You see, Sussman's on trial because he is not the hinge pin. He's the wheel bearing. He's the wheel bearing of this operation. And they got him just like they got, Al Capone on tax evasion. They got him for lying to the FBI in the September 2016 meeting because he failed to disclose the fact that he was their attorney. But that's pretty easy to find out, right? So you have to think to yourself, this guy's a sophisticated attorney, right? He's slick. He looks good. He's wealthy. He works for one of the most powerful law firms on the planet. Why would he do that? Why would he go to the FBI? Why wouldn't he cover a couple more pieces of the trail before he walked in there? Why wouldn't he use his own money to buy the flash drive? Why? Sure, you go buy 30 flash drives and it costs you, it probably cost him about $300, maybe $400 for 30 flash drives. But I'm sure he billed his other clients for those flash drives. Why did he have that paper trail? Why did he take such a risk? Because you got to remember when this took place. This took place in September of 2016. The election hadn't happened yet, right? Trump had only been the nominee for 5 months, or actually 4 months. He was the nominee on May 26th. In June, they started to put together the game plan. In July, money was spent putting together the Russia hoax and the Alpha Bank links, which were fabricated by Rodney Joffe. The dossier, all this stuff started being put together about this time. We're talking September 2016. The election's, still 2 months away, 3 months away. It's not going to happen yet. The answer, Earth Explorers, is that they thought they could win. They thought they would win. And Sussman figured, what the hell? I'll bill him for a couple of flash drives, 1,000 minutes of time, make some money. Hillary will win. None of this will ever be looked at. That's why. They never thought. They believed their own lies. They never thought Hillary would lose. They never thought Donald Trump would win. That's why. So Special Counsel John Durham knew this, and he presented this evidence to the jury that obviously shows that Sussman was their attorney, that he was on payroll, that he was representing them when he went to the FBI, and so he's guilty. But remember, he's just the wheel bearing. You got other people. You got Tech Executive 1, which is Rodney Joffe. I didn't know who that was until that name actually came out. I thought it was actually somebody else. Didn't want to make a prediction, but I didn't even know who Rodney Joffe was. I didn't know who New Star was. Rodney Joffe had the contract. He had the access to the DNS, the name server data from the White House. That was his access. He had DNS access to Trump's internet connection. Now, you know, you go to your cPanel and you take your domain and you have the name server point somewhere, right? It points to your server, it points to a forwarder or something. That's DNS data. That's how it's done. Like tonight, you're listening to me on one of these many fine platforms, but if you go to my website, americafreeradio.com, that points to a server that I have. And so that's the DNS data. So what Rodney Joffe did is he fabricated DNS data that pointed to Alpha Bank. Yes, he created a fake data trail that pointed from Donald Trump and his associates, and later the White House, to Alpha Bank. That's the level of access they had. Now I can do that because, I have my own server. It's a managed server, not a virtual private server, a VPS like most people use, but I use a managed server because I'm a little more sophisticated. I know how to do stuff on that level. I'm not a super coder, but trust me, this level of internet is not for the lightweight. So when Rodney Joffe gets that kind of access, he can go in and he actually faked DNS data. There was forwarding data in there. Now the information in the drives that Sussman presented to the general counsel of the FBI, whose name was James Baker, in the meeting that they were in 2016. And this is, by the way, a long time before Election Day. Election Day is coming up, but remember all the polls. Remember, it was like, 90% Hillary, 95% Hillary. Trump doesn't stand a snowball chance in hell, right? All the polls were saying this. All the news media was saying it. The only people that knew different were listeners to this program, because we are the mainstream media. Donald Trump was connecting directly to the people through Twitter, and they didn't even know. Why? Because they weren't calling people with cell phones. They were calling people with landlines. That's why their polls said, don't worry about it. Let him have his rallies. Let him have his YouTube videos. That's crazy. We have this. They were accessing the wrong data. So anyway, the revelation this Wednesday, which just took place a week ago, about the flash drives, it was actually presented by not who you would think. It was presented by the prosecution team, the paralegal. A paralegal, not even an attorney, just the evidence was presented in court. And her name is Corey Arsenault. And she examined the billing and the phone records in the case. Her testimony came on the final day of the prosecution's case in a federal court in Washington, D.C., and the trial started May 17th, set to conclude Friday. So in a Perkins Coie expense report that Arsenault discussed in that court, Sussman billed the Clinton campaign for 2 thumb drives. He didn't think anything about it. He didn't think Hillary was going to lose. He bought them at Staples September 13th, 2016, 6 days before his meeting with Baker. That means that he knew about it. He had the receipt in his pocket. He probably had been reimbursed already, which means he knew he was lying. So the defense team also called witnesses Wednesday, including former FBI agent Tom Grasso, who worked with Joffe, Rodney Joffe, said he considered Joffe a friend. Grasso also testified that Joffe gave him information about the now debunked Trump-Russia plot. In addition to having it been channeled to the Bureau through Sussman, Joffe gave Grasso 2 IP addresses. Think about that now. Rodney Joffe, who has the access to the name server I was telling you about, he had the 2 IP addresses that he made up. He made contact through. He was making information up. And he gave Grasso those 2 IP addresses that he eventually passed along to Chicago FBI office. That's because it had the fake Alpha Bank trail in it. Grasso said he knew that Joffe was a confidential human source at the time and had a handler. A handler is somebody that in the intelligence agency that works directly with you. In other words, you're a confidential informer, you have a handler that works with you, okay? It keeps your identification secret. But he didn't go through the so-called handline agent. He went direct. So according to Grasso, Joffe didn't want his name revealed to the FBI. That's why he didn't go to his handler. He feared for his personal safety regarding the allegations because he made them up. It implicated him. He's rich. He's worth $100 million. He's the CEO of New Star, which is the company that had the contract. Anyway, the defense called former DOJ officials Tashina Gauhar and Mary McCord regarding notes they took during a March 2017, almost a year later, a briefing of then acting Deputy Attorney General Dana Buente regarding, among other topics, the Alpha Bank allegation. Because what they're trying to do is draw a connection between Trump and Alpha Bank, which is ostensibly Moscow. That's how they were going to try to keep Trump from taking office. So the Wall Street Journal, of all places, they actually covered Mook's testimony. And so in the first paragraph on page A4, this is what it said. Hillary Clinton approved of an effort in the months before the 2016 election to provide the press with research purporting to show a computer link, that's the DNS data that Joffe provided, a computer link between the company of her GOP rival Donald Trump and a Russian bank. Her presidential campaign manager, Robbie Mook, testified on Friday. Now, the Times on this important piece of news on Saturday said nothing. The Post on Saturday said nothing. And if I was a reader of either one of those newspapers, which I am, but I don't really pay attention too closely, I'd probably want a refund because this is a major story. They said zip about it. Like I said, their job is not to prevent misinformation. It's to prevent information from reaching you. That's why you tune in here at America Free Radio. I would want to switch newspapers to the Journal or to the Washington Times, which does not publish on Saturday or Sunday, but came out with a very reliable report on Monday. So this is the way the Clinton crime syndicate works. This is how their news methods work, and they've been working this way for 30 years. One or two newspapers report a recent Clinton pratfall, and the rest of the media is mum. Say, for months or even years, they don't say anything about it. And then the Clintons' episodic apologists in the media come alive for a month or two before falling asleep again. It's like, you remember the Whitewater scandals? Maybe you don't. It was one of the ways that candidates launder money into their campaigns is through real estate. Okay, they launder money using real estate. They also do it using cars, but real estate is bigger dollars, especially when you're dealing with sizable pieces of property. And, it didn't really get a lot of publication. And the people that were talking about it back then really couldn't make a lot of sense to ordinary people because they don't understand. They didn't understand money laundering. They didn't know how it works. Now, those of us that have been car dealers in the past, we have to go every single year. We have dealership class, and in the class they discuss all the new laws and regulations, things we have to comply with about, how to sell a car, how to record a title. If you take a car in, you can't sell it until it's titled in your name. And if somebody comes in and pays cash for a car, there are certain protocols you have to make. If a car comes in that's not really priced correctly, you have to raise a flag about it. There's all kinds of things because people launder money through cars. In other words, they buy a bunch of cars in one state, move them to another state, and then sell the cars in that state and recoup their money. But the cash is actually dirty money. It's drug money or it's trafficking money. So they buy cars cash in Arkansas, then they move the cars to Tennessee, and they sell the cars. Well, now the money's clean, right? That's how you do money laundering. So you have to be careful about not just the money, but the cumulative money, because they'll buy 20, 30, 100 cars and move them to Tennessee and sell them. But they bought all the cars cash. See, this is how it's done. So anyway, the best examples of the amnesia of this of the Clinton crime syndicate in action, it comes very close to home with the Troopergate stories. Troopergate was state troopers in Arkansas are, of course, on state payroll, and rather than be loyal to the law, they're loyal to the governor. Okay, they kind of work for the governor. And when you're a state trooper, you have the authority, you have the gun, you have the intimidation, especially when you're dealing with somebody who, may have a record or may be easy to intimidate. And so the troopers were pimping for Bill Clinton. They would pick up women, and I mean they would detain women, and they would bring women to Bill Clinton in 1993 and around that time. And they even may have done some, other things. I don't want to make accusations here on the news that I can't back up, but a lot of coincidences. But it took decades, it took years and years and years for the fake stream press to admit it, even though they were faced with the facts. Even back then, they were burying the facts. They were killing reporters who were trying to get the facts out there. And whatever mentions they did give, it was pretty much an attack on the messenger, not the message itself. And that's why guys like, Danny Casolaro and that, they were headed to Washington to give information about the Clintons. And it's quite a drive from Arkansas to D.C. So you stop at a hotel in West Virginia called the Red Roof Inn. You rent a room and you're going to sleep the night and make the rest of the drive the next day so you're fresh. Well, they break into or get access to your hotel room and find you in your bathtub, and they cut you to pieces, dead. And they take all the evidence that it is you were going to present. It happened. We reported it. Lots of people reported it. So anyway, the prosecution claims Sussman billed the Clinton campaign for this piece of dubious information, and the prosecution claims that it has the evidence for making this claim. Why is this important? Who gives a rat's ass, right? Because it brings the Clinton crime syndicate into the crosshairs of justice for the first time in history. It's never happened before. And now there are federal judges that have been appointed by President Donald Trump. Not a bunch of U.S. attorneys. That didn't happen. President Trump didn't come in and fire all the U.S. attorneys like Clinton did and Obama did. They just fired them all and hired their own attorneys. President Donald Trump didn't do that. He kept them. Instead, he appointed about 300 federal judges. You see, for decades, Hillary Clinton walked through indictments and trials and interviews and committees and public appearances, and she laughed, literally laughed about the murders, the assassinations of lawyers, reporters, bankers, and even campaign workers. She flaunted the millions that she took in embezzlement and bribes and in selling technology. She laughed about the FBI records and even used the military twice to assassinate leaders of other countries so she could steal their weapons, their gold, and yes, even their children. What happens every single time the spotlight gets anywhere close to the Clintons outside prison walls? You know what happens, because you read Charm a Favor. But in case you didn't read Charm a Favor, I'm going to read to you chapter 12. Now, this was a very prophetic chapter because when I wrote it, I just streamed it. It streamed out of me. It was amazing. But shortly thereafter, you're going to know what happened when I finish the chapter. This is a conversation between an agent for The Voice, which I have to kind of keep it cloaked in Charm a Favor. I do reveal it in the next book, but I'm just going to call it The Voice for now. But the agent's name is Lim Shun. Lim Shun. And Lim Shun pays a visit to Bill Clinton, and they have a discussion. And this is the discussion. This plan has worked in every country where it's been tried. We've actually gotten quite good at it, said Lim Shun. You may have succeeded in places like Norway or China, but America's different. It's not going to be that easy, said Bill. It is simply a matter of carnage. Look how it is working in the Palestinian situation. Just let me handle everything, said Lim Shun. I can't believe you use that as one of your success stories. That is a disaster, and you know it, said Bill. It is based on an ancient system, older than this world, I can tell you. You attack and torment the dragon in his golden lair until he becomes angry enough to fly down and incinerate the village. You show the pictures of all the charred, innocent children in church choirs to the armies of the world, and they go kill the dragon for you. Then you take his gold, said Lim Shun. That's a kid's story. Now, I understand having the cameras set up around the schoolyard when the Israelis hit back after the rocket attack. That's a stroke of genius. But you can't poke and prod America like a dragon. Our military can drop a package down your chimney from 50,000 feet and vaporize a problem. No pictures to show, and very little collateral damage. Besides, all the armies in the world cannot defeat the American military, said Bill. The principle is the same, nonetheless. We get the dragon to eat its own tail, said Lim Shun. The Ouroboros, said Bill, as a matter of question. That is one eternal round. What I am proposing is a way to make the dragon consume itself, said Lim Shun. I didn't go from being a lawyer in the podunk state of Arkansas to the most powerful man in the world in a single generation by being a patient man, Mr. Lim. When I finish this cigar, our time here will be finished, said Bill. The long part of our plan is already completed. America is divided into two. One part believes that rights come from God, and the other part believes that rights come from government. They disagree on almost everything, said Lim Shun. You're behind the times, Mr. Lim. We have done way better than that. My friends own all forms of major media, movies, news broadcasts, music, and even the contractors that provide most of the government services. We have the poor ready to kill off the rich. We have blacks thinking Whitey's out to get 'em, and there is hardly a white person who doesn't fear the same thing about blacks. I really think our whole ISIS marketing plan is sheer genius. Man, if it wasn't for those damn bloggers and social platforms, this whole thing would never have been possible. I used to hate those guys when I was president. It's taken 50 years, more or less, but I think we have them right where we want them, said Bill, exhaling a large draw on his cigar. Still, I don't think you're going to get past the armed American. We need to have a series of mass shootings. Perhaps we should expand your original idea of Fast and Furious. That would be the next part of the plan, said Lim Shun. That's not easy to do. My associates already chose a few prime candidates after months of psychotropic drugs and hypnosis, and a few of them shot up a public place or two. We tried killing all those folks at Waco and Ruby Ridge, but no matter what we tried, the public wouldn't buy it. Besides, most of these mass shooters are so wiped out on drugs they couldn't hit anything, said Bill, walking over by the fireplace. It's important to make sure that people develop a fear of the weapons themselves, said Lim Shun. Look, we got soldiers of Islam to attack things like Christmas parties, but that had the opposite effect altogether. And every time we make a public move on the gun manufacturers or ammo suppliers, gun sales go through the roof. I mean it. Looky here. Obama doesn't have much to hang his hat on, but he's the greatest gun salesman the world has ever known. You have to come up with something better than that, said Bill. That was merely testing the perimeter. We now have the politicians in position. The entertainers and sports stars are in position. All that is required now is to have my associates conduct a few events, and the Americans will disarm themselves for you, said Lim Shun. I thought that was against the rules. Your associates have some kind of contract limitation, right? You can't just step in and take over a person, said Bill, drawing circles in the dark air of the private library with the cherry smoking end of his cigar. We can go wherever we're invited, said Lim Shun. There are rules about that as well. I studied war, you know. We perfected the whole Control-Alt-Delete thing using Wars R Us to replace news headlines we didn't like. We bent the rules a little over there in Kosovo, and the whole thing began to fall apart there at the end. But at least they got my name out of the papers. Old Slobodan did go to prison, said Bill. Yes, we remember. That was another one of your loose ends we had to clean up. This may take some time. It takes longer than 30 years to take over a planet, said Lim Shun. Tell me about it. I think I like the old ways better. You just shoot him in the head and crash the plane, said Bill with a chuckle. I am showing you the old ways, said Lim Shun. Your old ways and my old ways are different. I would like to get this done in my lifetime, Mr. Lim, said Bill, puffing the cigar aggressively. As I was saying, my associates have been invited by souls in despair. They only require a few days to accomplish the mission. I think if we raise the bar for mass shootings, it should leave anyone who still believes owning a gun is a God-given right in a very small, radical, and unpopular minority. If we combine the firepower of Fast and Furious with a large enough crowd of patriots, it should be widely supported by the public, more or less, You coordinate the press, the entertainers, and the sports heroes, and America will begin to disarm itself willingly. Once that is partially complete, we will be ready for the next part of our plan, said Lim Shun. Don't you worry about them. The money's already in the bank. We even have a few good theme songs put together. Hell, kids will be singing them like London Bridge is falling down, said Bill, laughing himself into a raspy cough. Just don't make the same mistake again, said Lim Shun. And, what mistake you talking about? Said Bill, looking down into Lim Shun's intense brown eyes. Letting your actors think they are actually in charge, said Lim Shun. We've done a pretty good job with that, actually. Look at the attention Hillary's getting these days. She's more famous than fried chicken, worshipped by 47% of the people, said Bill, chuckling. And hated by the rest. That's not exactly what we had in mind, said Lim Shun. Yeah, but have you ever seen a more focused woman in all your life? She wakes up every day knowing it's just not enough. Absolutely amazing the deals we have going, said Bill. She lost the election, said Lim Shun flatly. Not for lack of trying. We got the nomination easily enough. We controlled the entire Democrat National Committee. Look here, we brought in all the money, so naturally it belonged to us. We recorded everything Trump and his people said 24 hours a day and even went back to some NBC files and hit him with that. Nothing worked against the guy. Kind of reminds me of me, said Bill. Your lust for power and our long-term planning could have been even more successful, you know. You sold far more influence than you can now deliver. These are difficult accounts to settle. You see, we are not the only organization with a charm of favor, said Lim Shun coldly. Oh, this ain't over. Not by a long shot. I think that people have just about enough of Mr. Trump. Wait until they see the little insurrection we have planned, said Bill, puffing a cloud of thick smoke and blowing through it. I think those plans are still being reviewed, said Lim Shun. Oh, come on now. I know your boss loves nothing better than a good old-fashioned street fight, said Bill. For the record, you don't work for me. I'm just the messenger. Oaths have rules, said Lim Shun, facing Bill. We know what the terms are, Mr. Lim, and we've never wavered from our end of the bargain, said Bill. Not to take gratuitous license, but that depends on what the meaning of the word wavered is. We have lived up to our end, said Lim Shun shortly. Look, the boss has been good to me. Gave me a life that would shame a king. A deal's a deal, said Bill, inwardly reassessing that even the longest mortal life is but a few moments to an almost immortal being. Very well. I will let you finish your cigar in peace. Until we meet again, said Lim Shun, firmly shaking Bill's hand. He turned and walked smoothly for the door of the library. It opened from the other side as he approached, and his bodyguard stepped aside for him to exit. Bill heard the echo of the front door closing in the large foyer outside his library. The limousine idled silently up to the stairs of the Chappaquiddick mansion. His bodyguard opened the rear passenger door, and he stepped inside to sit on the leather couch. The bodyguard closed the door and stepped into the passenger side of the front seat. The small screen facing the back couch flickered for a moment, and in a few seconds displayed a logo with a side-facing eagle. "Report," said the gravelly male voice as the vehicle began moving forward. "He is agreeable to our plan," said Mr. Lim to the voice. "This is becoming increasingly important to me," said the voice. "Your perspective is understandably different from ours," said Lim Shun. "Seasons come and go," Mr. Lim, but they come and go on time, said the voice. There are always signs, sir, said Lim Shun. I have been providing wealth and power to humans since the beginning of time, and I have always been disappointed. They love to serve when they are young, but the populace will not follow a young person, and when they are old, they begin to complain about the payment for what I have given them, said the voice. Greed is only one side of the blade that carves a path through mortality. Fear cuts just as deeply, said Lim Shun. It is easy to make a person have fear. It is quite another thing for a people, said the voice. He is implementing Operation Dewclaw, said Lim Shun. That puts many things in motion, said the voice. Soros and Singer have committed the funds. The date has been set for the national insurrection, said Lim Shun. I don't think a few broken windows will make Americans afraid, said the voice. People are afraid of the dark, said Lim Shun. The device is ready, said the voice. Your man is prepared to deploy, asked Lim Shun. If enough people can be, shall we say, inspired to join in the operation, it will go well with my team. We just have time to get this right, to get the best results, said the voice. Men would have quit by now to preserve their own flesh. She is far more bloodthirsty than any male we have ever groomed, said Lim Shun. Women are just as eager to trade their flesh for fame and glory, said the voice. There's a difference, sir. Men prefer to trade someone else's flesh to achieve their power, said Lim Shun. We'll come back right after the break. Not much to go. Hang in there. We'll be right back with more America Free Radio right after this.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
This is Thomas, a.k.a. a Mad Painter. I'd like you to join me Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for Open Canvas. Don't forget to bring an open mind.
Yes, folks, that's right. Bring an open mind to an open canvas. Again, that is Monday nights, 10 p.m. Eastern. UFOs to government corruption. This is Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Interested in the paranormal, murder mystery, real natural law? Do you enjoy interviews with amazing guests? Then join Crypt Rick every Monday night, 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on Revolution Radio. Studio A, freedomslips.com. Crypt Rick's Ivan Thinking. Welcome to the Crypt.
Join me at Revolution Radio, Studio B, at 11 a.m. on Saturday for Free Association, when we take a look at philosophy, spirituality, psychology, social issues, and geopolitics. It's every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Studio B at freedomslips.com.
Enter into a world unseen on Raven Star's Witching Hour. You will encounter eclectic topics from the realm of spirit brought into our matrix of truth. With your host, the Solaris Blue Raven. Solaris will bring you an array of unique guests covering topics from ghostly spirits to amazing anomalies, covert technology, UFOs, and shadowy global events.
And that's right here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, Saturdays, midnight till 2 a.m. Eastern Time. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
Let the magic rise.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
Thank you for listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Any commercial advertising you may hear in this program is of the sole discretion and benefit of the host of whose program you are listening to. Revolution Radio does not endorse any commercial products, nor does it accept monetary compensation for on-air advertising of commercial products, nor will it ever. We are and shall remain 100% listener supported. Any product advertising on this program are considered used at higher risk, and Revolution Radio shall not be held liable for any claims or damages received from any product advertised within this program. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
All right. So good. I appreciate those breaks so much. And by the way, if you're interested in picking up any of the books, including Charm of Favor, some of them are available here in my warehouse, and I can send them to you autographed. But if you buy them from Amazon, you get the audiobook for free. Just write me and I'll send it to you. I will also send you a signature card. It looks just like this. And it has adhesive on the back. So you just peel the adhesive off and stick it inside the cover, and you can have my signature inside the book. And I'll send you these for free. So all you have to do is write me, give me an address. I'll drop them in an envelope, sign them, drop them in an envelope, and send them to you for your books that you bought off Amazon. My gift to you, because I want to make sure you have the autograph. And Amazon sells the book pretty quickly. They're more expensive if you buy them from my warehouse because I paid shipping and all that stuff to get them here. Then I got to pay shipping to get them to you. So you can buy them just as easily off Amazon, and they come pretty quickly. All right, let's continue. This is chapter 12 out of Charm of Favor. The reason that I'm reading it is that this book was written, actually most of it was written before the first Q drop. So you know when this was done, way back in 2018. This was also done before two events, and you've already picked up one of them, the insurrection operation, right? But the second one you're going to pick up here in just a second. And it happened. It happened a few, maybe a couple of weeks after I finished this chapter. I mean, that's how prophetic this book was. It just keeps streaming. So let me read that last sentence over again. There's a difference, sir. Many prefer to trade someone else's flesh to achieve their power, said Lim Shun. You say it like sacrificing children is a bad thing to achieve power and glory forever, said the voice. Things are different now. Technology allows us to disseminate knowledge in seconds around the world. Society has become instant and disposable. People just want sex and to be cared for like always. They have replaced joy with pleasure and God with drugs. It's their capacity for hatred that is the most fascinating, said Lim Shun. You patronize me, Mr. Lim. It is sweet savor to watch them fight, but intoxicating to watch them scrub mercy from their existence with their hatred. When the lights go out, we shall see their true nature erupt, said the voice. The innocent will escape us, said Lim Shun. There are no innocent. Not any more, spat the voice after a brief silence. You may have made it more difficult for them, but there are still some who maintain their sovereignty, here and there, said Lim Shun. There is no place for them to run. There is no wilderness. There is no refuge. My soldiers own the banks that own their homes. We own the parties that own their candidates. We own the media they watch, the books they read, the schools they attend for higher learning, said the voice, like it was trying to convince itself. Your best work, sir, by far, is with the religions, said Lim Shun, knowing the effect it would have. A deep breath could be heard over the speakers in the limousine's chamber. I cannot take all the credit for that one. To craft one religion focused on self-reliance and another on spreading its gospel with the sword is the way it has been done for billions of years. However, to do it so well, so balanced and sustainable for so long, it is so much like raising mice to feed your snake, don't you think? Asked the voice, almost providing Mr. Lim a chance to lecture the voice. Two voices make the song to a higher level, sir, said Lim Shun. Harmony, Mr. Lim. You speak of harmony. I want dissonance. I want humans to choose misery and beat themselves for choosing it. I want them to sell their own flesh for a meal and curse that they have grown fat. I want them to dream of tomorrow with a cynicism so thick they cannot move. I want them to kill everything in sight to preserve their own life, and then despair when they take their own life as they follow their victims to hell, said the voice. We were just talking about that very subject, said Lim Shun. It's time for the special campaign, said the voice. We have tested every possible approach. Black shooting blacks in places like Chicago is completely ignored, said Lim Shun. I told you this. Killing out of necessity for business or to remove competitors is worthless. Even the first murder on this planet was completely ignored by God because it was business and nothing personal, said the voice. As I was saying, we tried religious genocide and even mass murder of entire church families on live television. But the people were not moved. We even produced videos with public execution of innocent Christians by sawing off their heads with knives. They simply went about their lives as normal, and those responsible for the slaughter never saw a second of justice. Mr. Clinton doubts Americans will ever give up their guns, said Lim Shun. It matters not. In the end, hatred is an acquired taste, Mr. Lim. Humans play at it with their sports, business, and even religions. It's when they're willing to charge across the frozen tundra with a battle axe, screaming under a banner, that it really puts the meat on the bone. Once the killing starts, the one-upmanship never ends, until there is only one man standing, and he will gladly end his own life rather than live another day with the pain. That is a good day for business, said the voice. How do we proceed, sir? Asked Lim Shun. One had to be careful at this point in the conversation. You know the rules, Mr. Lim, said the voice. The shooter that has been prepared is white, said Lim Shun. I am well aware of that, said the voice. If he does not kill enough innocent people, or it does not get enough publicity, or the victims are too much of one race or another, we will not be successful, said Mr. Lim. Let's stick to the theme. Tell me what you think that is, Mr. Lim, requested the voice. To create a world of fear, where a man can run to and fro, searching for the truth and never find salvation, said Lim Shun. And why is that? Asked the voice. Because it will not exist, said Lim Shun. That is correct. And what is the one thing left on the earth that prevents that from being the case? Asked the voice, as though scolding a child who played too long and forgot to empty the trash. America, said Lim Shun coldly. More specifically, it is the armed American. We need to get them to believe it is not just a deterrent against the likely event that they have to overthrow the government, although I do love a good bloody revolution. We want them to lock and load and get ready to fight in their own neighborhoods, said the voice. Mr. Soros and Mr. Singer have provided the resources, as you commanded. Mr. Obama has organized his people. Aside from some last-minute greed and acts of self-preservation, the soldiers are in place in every major city in America. Coupled with the device, we have the recipe for what Mr. Clinton says will be the biggest street fight in history, said Lim Shun. How are we coming with the invasion? Asked the voice. Europe is ours for the taking. The same with Indochina. We have a few cities in America, perhaps a state or two. Japan, Hungary, some others are complete non-starters, said Lim Shun. We can agree that Americans have been turned against one another, that this inconvenient concept of liberty and freedom will have no champion left, correct? Asked the voice, as though only one answer was allowed. I fear it is a more of a concept, sir, said Lim Shun. No, it is a concept. You have rights only if I say you have rights, said the voice. That is precisely what they claim in their constitution, said Lim Shun, trying to make his point. I never agreed to that, spat the voice, loud enough to clip the display system's amplifier. It did not require your agreement. Besides, humans do not widely even know that you exist, said Lim Shun. They all know I exist, and they fear me, said the voice. They fear a concept of you. They do not know you the way I do, said Lim Shun. Asked the voice quietly. I didn't say that. I know that light is not native to the universe. All of this is an illusion. The stars, planets, time, they're not real. I am at peace with this truth, and nothing anyone does will ever change that. Energy can't go anywhere. This is a game. and to be clear of it is the goal of awareness. Do I fear that? No, not really, said Lim Shun. I enjoy our conversations, said the voice, regaining his composure. I still require some assistance with our special event in Las Vegas. After months of research, we finally have the right crowd of people, and have taken the proper precautions to ensure success. And we have been invited, said Lim Shun. Yes, I know. We have to be careful. Killing innocents with my soldiers gains us nothing, said the voice. I'm aware of that. Humans will do the shooting of their own free will, technically speaking. As you have done already, they need protection to make the mission possible, without their knowledge, of course, in accordance with the rules. Confusion, misdirection, interference are always very helpful in these matters. As fast as the news cycle is now, within a few days, any conspiracy of our involvement can be diluted from consideration by nearly everyone, said Lim Shun. That is one of the nicest things about global non-stop news, said the voice. When these shootings take place, we will not focus on the person doing the shooting. His race? Oh, yes, of course. His religion? Absolutely. But they will find no such motives this time. What we want to focus on is the weapon itself. Who made it? What does it look like? How does it function? How the weapon itself did the killing, said Lim Shun. Clever boy, said the voice. If we can get some extra influence in this area, while protecting the syndicate and our personnel from any implication, said Lim Shun, leaving the sentence open. Consider it done. We are aligned, then? Asked the voice. Yes, sir, said Lim Shun. I assume you have everything in place, said the voice. Correct, said Lim Shun. No loose ends? The Clintons always had loose ends, said the voice. We have made sure his indiscretions never caused any trouble, said Lim Shun. Like you took care of Danny Casolaro, that freelance reporter with the October surprise? Asked the voice. It was settled, said Lim Shun. You had him cut to pieces in his hotel bathtub, said the voice. He had suicide. Sad young man. They never found any of his research, said Lim Shun. What about Paul Tully, the trusted Democrat National Committee political director, found dead in a hotel room in Little Rock? What about the man with the evidence for the grand jury? What was his name? Oh, yes, Ian Spiro. His wife and 3 children shot in the head at home. And then there was his speechwriter, Paula Grober, killed in her car. What did she do wrong? Then there was Mac McClarty. He makes a call from the ski lodge to our boy and dies in a skiing accident right after the call. Or like the Coleman girl, 40 years ago. Clinton was, 31 years old and already the Attorney General? She was pregnant, too. He could have used a car and dumped her in the river. But I guess we used that one already. I suppose all this cleanup labor has been worth it. We all take risks, don't we? Asked the voice. Not all of us, said Lim Shun. I look forward to reading about your success about this mass shooting, Mr. Lim, said the voice. Until then, my master. Just remember, Earth explorers, criminals might be afraid of the law, but they need to be even more afraid of their victims. Learn how to properly shoot, when to shoot, and when it is not necessary to shoot. Remember, once you aim your gun at someone, your whole life will change. So what is going on? What you see happening around us is the groundswell, the earthquake that starts the red wave. Any incoming tidal wave is often preceded by an earthquake on land, and last week several tremors signaled the red tsunami that will hit America in November. Liberal bulwarks toppled like dominoes across the cultural, legal, and political spectra. One shock felled a former shaky Republican president from a dynasty of shaky Republican office holders to end his power line for the foreseeable future, possibly forever. At the same time, a once moderately liberal tycoon became an even greater conservative hero. And sensing the unsteadiness of the left, two empires struck back, the first out of fear of the public, the other out of fear of God. Fresh from canceling Meghan Markle's feminist girl propaganda, Pearl, Netflix just redoubled its progressive purge, going so far as to threaten the very woke employee it previously coddled. An updated Netflix culture memo contains a new selection called Artistic Expression, which ascertains the company will not censor specific artists or voices even if employees find the content repugnant. Then comes the clincher. We support the principle that Netflix offers a diversity of stories, even if we find some titles counter to our personal values. What Netflix giveth to the left-wing youth indoctrination like Markle's show, it also taketh away. Astonishingly, even braving accusations of racism. Not long ago, Netflix would have taken virtue signaling over profit and produced the works. We couldn't be more proud that Ava has chosen Netflix as the home of her first animated series. Since then, the traditionalist perennial blowback, such as last year's CRT collapse in Virginia and Governor Ron DeSantis' slapdown of Disney in Florida, it made Netflix think twice. This is a very big deal. Directly addressing Pelosi, Cordiloni wrote, I am hereby notifying you that you are not to present yourself for Holy Communion, and should you do so, you are not to be admitted to Holy Communion until such time as you publicly repudiate your advocacy for the legitimacy of abortion and confess and receive absolution of this grave sin in the sacrament of penance. You didn't hear those words in the news, did you? You just heard that Pelosi can't partake of communion. Pelosi has no sanctuary, none at all. While church leaders found their voice, former President George W. Bush lost his in a historic Freudian gaffe from which his already sullied reputation will never recover, and neither will his political lineage. Speaking at his presidential library Wednesday of last week, Bush condemned the decision of one man to launch a wholly unjustified and brutal invasion of Iraq. I mean, Ukraine. In that moment, Bush fortified the worst accusation leveled against him from both the left and the right, most damagingly from his dynasty slayer, Donald Trump. And many more tremors shook the Democrats last week. A federal judge blocked the Virtual Joe's attempt to end Title 42, and with it one of the last remaining obstacles to mass crossings from Mexico. John Durham's team tightened the legal noose around Hillary Clinton's neck with evidence her lawyer Michael Sussman pushed, debunked, and fake Trump collusion material on the FBI. Liberal progressive needler Bill Maher punctured one of Biden and his party's sacred cows, medical facilitation for transgender children. I quote, "If kids knew what they wanted at age 8, then the world would be filled with cowboys and princesses," close quote. And once Democrat-leaning Elon Musk came out as a new Republican. Quote, "In the past, I voted Democrat, but because they're mostly the kindness party, but they have become the party of division and hate, so I can no longer support them and will vote Republican. Now watch their dirty tricks campaign against me unfold," close quote. Democrats have long been obsessed with rising sea levels, and with good reason. When the red tide hits in November, they're going to drown. And that's why we have dangerous waters ahead. Do not take your eyes off of your surroundings. The red wave on the horizon is a sign of dangerous waters. If the global syndicate sees what we see, and I maintain that regardless of the public statements of our drunken Speaker of the House, they do see what we see, then they will unleash something horrible to stop it. Hunter Biden may never fall under scrutiny by his father's DOJ, but House Republicans are laying the groundwork for a full court press into the first son's finances as soon as the elections are over. The top Republican of the House Oversight Committee, Representative James Comer of Kentucky, he fired off numerous letters to banks and the U.S. Treasury Department to demand more information about Hunter Biden and his circle of associates. The probe has zero Democrat support, and House Republicans have no enforcement powers yet. But should Republicans win the House control in November, and I maintain that they will by a very wide margin, it will give them the power to hold the hearings and to issue the subpoenas. Joe Biden will not finish his presidency. Kamala Harris will not take his place. Quote, "We're definitely laying the groundwork to come out of the gate in January," said Comer, who added that the investigation will focus on whether President Biden had any links to his son's business dealings. Oh, it is going to open the sewer. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are clearly feigning outrage to excite their base instead of working in a bipartisan way to improve the lives of Americans. That's what Representative Carolyn Maloney, Democrat from New York, said. The actions of the younger Biden have been a focus for Republicans for several years, including a Republican-led Senate investigation launched before the 2020 election that looked at the business deals in Ukraine. Yeah, but they didn't get it done. The Democrat-led House impeached President Trump in 2019 for actions related to withholding aid to Ukraine while he was pressing Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to investigate whether Joe Biden, as vice president in the Obama administration, sought to remove a prosecutor to protect a gas company called Burisma, on whose board Hunter Biden served. Mr. Trump was acquitted by the GOP-led Senate. Of course, we know that Yovanovitch and we know that Vindman lied. and the impeachment was completely bogus. Now, Senate Republicans, they're conducting their own investigation into the Biden's role. The report found no wrongdoing, though it said 2 Obama administration officials had raised concerns to the White House in 2015 about Biden being on the board. They're keeping their powder dry. Because the investigation began as a tax inquiry years ago, it's expanded into a federal probe involving the FBI and the IRS. A source familiar with the investigation now tells reporters that 2 men who worked with Hunter Biden when his father was vice president were called to the grand jury last fall. And that means that they had to testify, and that means that that evidence is sitting there in front of the grand jury. Now, it's not going to go forward until Republicans take control of the committees, but then it will go forward. It will go forward. And a move that I've been pushing for a long time, not only in my writings but also on this program, to disband the FBI because of this, because of what has come about, because of what we have been facing. And it's not just this. It's been going on for a long, long time. The FBI lies more to the FBI than any criminal. The entire organization was founded in corruption in 1935 by the most corrupt president in history, FDR. They were bad men who were hired and authorized by FDR to use whatever means necessary to protect the DNC. And they have been doing that ever since. The FBI's long history of abusing its power is once again prominent amid the continued expose by Special Counsel John Durham. His prosecution is demonstrating the FBI's abuse of its power to deploy federal intelligence assets against political opponents of the Democrats, the same as they have been doing since 1935. The FBI routinely intervenes in U.S. politics, such as when the FBI assisted the Hillary Clinton campaign in painting former President Donald Trump as a Russian intelligence asset when he was not, by getting a Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act warrant, a FISA warrant. 4 times. They got it against Carter Page. They got it against Donald Trump and his inner circle. All of it was fake. It appears the FBI animus for Trump was rooted in disagreements about the foreign policy that Trump campaigned on. Spygate, however, is only a more recent manifestation of a very long history of FBI abuses that Congress must rein in, and they must do it now. The FBI, ever since the war on terror started, has targeted Muslim communities with informants who receive $100,000 or more for their work and may be engaged in illegal activities that go unaddressed. Christian groups, Mormon groups, all over the Trump rallies, you see FBI agents. All over the J6 rally that we had on January 6th of 2021. All of that was infiltrated by FBI. All the violence, all the window breaking, all of the threats and beatings and everything were all FBI agents. Trevor Aronson analyzed thousands and thousands of FBI cases, and he found that of these defendants caught up in an FBI terrorism sting operations, an FBI informant was the person who led one of every 3 terrorist plots. And the FBI also provided all of the necessary weapons, all of the money, all the intelligence, and all the transportation to make those terror events happen. The most infamous example is when an FBI agent told a soon-to-be shooter to tear up Texas right before that person shot up a crowded hall. Even the San Bernardino shooter had contact with people on the FBI's radar. More recently, there were allegations that the Las Vegas shooter, remember Stephen Paddock? I just read you chapter 12. That was the Las Vegas shooter. His girlfriend was an FBI informant. The plane that he flew was leased by none other than Barack Obama. The same, everything is linked. Since Trump was elected, the FBI's focus has shifted away from Islamic terror towards supposed far-right terror. That means you. Patriots are being targeted by the FBI. Even Senator Cruz launched this attack against the FBI for participating in the terroristic acts that became the backbone of the J6 conflict. Just like the FBI's role in the Muslim communities after 9/11, the plot involving Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, timed to take place heading into the 2020 election, involved mostly FBI informants and agents. Journalist Glenn Greenwald has asked similar questions about the FBI's involvement in the January 6th U.S. Capitol riot, given the number of persons named in government court documents who are not being prosecuted. The footage showing them is not being shown. It's being sealed. In a major abuse of power, Virtual Joe and his gang of criminals mobilized FBI counterterrorism resources to investigate parents for expressing concerns at school board meetings. And to top all of this off, the FBI has a reputation of protecting the powerful and trampling on justice. The latest example is the FBI protecting sex predator Larry Nassar because of his powerful position in the U.S. gymnastics program. And let's not even fail to mention Jeffrey Epstein and his groomer, Ghislaine Maxwell, just went to trial. All that tapes, all the evidence, millions of photographs and recordings and videos of prominent leaders, generals, politicians, CEOs with underage children on Epstein's Island. None of it will ever see the light of day. And forget about Hunter Biden's laptop. What about Huma Abedin's laptop? What about Weiner's laptop? What about all that evidence that police saw and committed suicide or had to be treated by mental health professionals because of what they saw on that laptop? All of it in the hands of the FBI, none of it being prosecuted. To preserve our democratic republic, not our democracy, our republic, the FBI has to be disbanded. Serious reform is not going to be good enough. While many right-wing politicians call for investigation, we, the people, realize that these investigations are useless. They're just fundraising ploys. History-minded traditionalists might believe that in a perfect world, the FBI would be ended entirely, with its duties given back to state police forces. But try finding support, even among Republican House and Senate members, for that idea. It isn't there. A radical, impactful, but also politically workable solution is to break up the FBI, disband it, shatter it into at least a dozen separate agencies. And these smaller components would have way less power, way less prestige, would allow Congress greater oversight over the specific results and actions at each newly independent organization. Further, Congress would have greater ability to tweak funding for these separate smaller agencies based on results. You wouldn't see senators up there like Lindsey Graham asking the FBI, do you need more money? Because you didn't get as much money this year as you did last year. Why, yes, we could certainly use more resources and it would be put to good use. I just watched that testimony today. Ridiculous. The Senate should be ripping the FBI apart, floor by floor, office by office. Here's the roadmap, Earth Explorers. Breaking up the FBI, locate the headquarters of those agencies across America. Get them out of Washington, D.C. Get them into the Midwest, into the Rust Belt, into the southeastern United States. The Organized Crime Agency can be placed in Indiana, the Counterterrorism Agency in Raleigh, the Anti-Human Trafficking Agency, Kansas City, or San Antonio. The heads of these new, smaller agencies, they'll still be appointed by the president and confirmed by the Senate, but there'll be more of them, and they'll be smaller, and they'd have smaller budgets. The FBI's roughly $10 billion budget is going to be apportioned across these agencies. But the creation of separate agencies allows Congress much more control over the funding. For example, relative to the problem, fighting human trafficking and child exploitation and abuse is completely under-resourced in the FBI. And yet the FBI's politicization has it adding agents to go after political opponents instead of adding more resources to protect kids. How about create a separate anti-trafficking agency altogether? Headquarter it in the heartland. The FBI's additional domestic terrorism agents should be removed, and they should be replaced with new roles in the anti-trafficking agency. The public, you, the people, when you listen to this program, you are absolutely stunned to know how little our federal government spends on measures to fight against trafficking and child exploitation. It's pennies, and that's why it goes on. That's why it's the biggest cash crime in this country. The public would also be totally blown away to know how much more we're spending in trapping people in the name of fighting domestic terrorism, which the public would rightly judge far less a problem than the human trafficking problem. So, Earth Explorers, let's open the doors and let's let the sun shine in. If Republicans are dissatisfied with this plan, so be it. Come up with something better. I dare you. Our elected politicians hide behind rhetoric or outrage while failing to craft any really good policy. Why don't we write the policy? And why don't we make it happen? The whole point of America's founding documents is that too much power concentrated in too few hands is always corrupting, especially when this power is unaccountable to us. The DC bureaucracy, and specifically the intelligence agencies, have long become powers unto themselves and a threat to us, to the people. When the government is afraid of the people, then we have peace, we have prosperity, and we have justice. When the people are afraid of the government, we have recession, we have war, we have distrust, and we have failure. The FBI is a poster child for the perversion of our system. It must be dissolved. Now, somebody asked me the other day why we don't just build the southern border wall, but we will spend $40 billion on Ukraine. I said, the answer is simple. The Ukraine is where politicians go to stuff their airplanes with cash. The open southern border is where the cartels pay the politicians for being able to launder human flesh and drugs into America. That's the answer. Well, I got news for you. Very few Americans are willing to back Virtual Joe's response. They're not willing to do this. A new poll from the Associated Press says that just 21% of Americans say they have a great deal of confidence in Virtual Joe to properly address the Russian aggression in Ukraine. 39% say they have almost no confidence in the Democrat, whose approval rating hit an all-time low of 39% this week. Actually, I think it's around 33%. 54% of Americans say they disapprove of his U.S. relations with Russia. And because of their distrust in Virtual Joe, because we realize we don't have a president, we have a virtual president. The person that's writing the words on the other side of the teleprompter, that's the president. We don't know who that is because it's a global think tank, a globalist think tank. I call them tankers that write everything he says. They write all the executive orders. Americans see taking action against Russia as a farce. 55% of adults said sanctioning Russia is a bad idea. You know why? Because sanctions never work against major powers. They don't. Tariffs work. Monetary motivation to do the right thing, that works. But sanction doesn't work against a major power. You know why? Because we're intertangled. You see, Russia provides the world wheat. Russia provides the world oil and other goods. You can't sanction Russia without hurting their customers. Europe is about to die. They're not going to survive 2022. Let me say that again. Europe is not going to survive 2022. It's going to break apart into individual nations. Germany is not going to go down with Europe. Other countries are going to make their own deals for energy and for money and for trade. They're not going to go down with Europe. They're not going to form this coalition of death that the globalists want them to. You know the four horsemen of the apocalypse, right? You know the fourth horseman is green, right? Well, a fully realized green transition would amount to the largest mass murder event since the killings of 100 million people by communist regimes in the 1900s. It's true. Relying too heavily on intermittent, unreliable green energy sources like solar and wind is going to starve hundreds of millions of people around the world of much needed electricity. Mr. Epstein wrote this book called Fossil Future, Why Global Human Flourishing Requires More Oil, Coal, and Natural Gas, not less. And in this book he says, when I say it'll be the greatest act of mass murder, what I'm saying is losing these benefits that everyone is ignoring or denying is going to be catastrophic. You just have to look at a few facts. Low cost and reliable energy is fundamental to human flourishing. Since it breeds greater productivity, we don't spend so much of our day looking for a clean glass of water or a can of green beans. In addition, fossil fuels are uniquely good at producing such low cost. They can be used efficiently. They can be used in a non-polluting way. The whole idea that carbon is a planet killer is a farce. The whole idea of a carbon footprint is a farce. It's a lie. It is designed to crush the human race. Fossil fuels, namely oil, let's just call it oil because it really isn't made by fossils anyway, natural gas, coal, they currently fulfill about 80% of the world's energy demand. 80%. And solar and wind are propped up by favorable government programs, which means you pay for it, whether you use it or not. And the green energy projects often require backup fossil fuel generation and only produce electricity, which accounts for 20% of the world's total energy needs. You also need heat. You also need combustion. You see, it's not a crackpot idea that's come up with by people who have no interest in energy. All these schemes that they're talking about, they've never been done on this kind of scale. They've been done if you want to go off-grid somewhere in Texas or Kansas or something, but you can't do it in Greenland. You can't do it in Norway. And because these things have unpredictable costs, or they don't put out any energy at all. So the anti-fossil fuel movement, let's just call it what it is even more powerful and dangerous than anybody can believe. Net zero, this whole ridiculous curse on this planet Earth called net zero, has now become a mainstream goal, whereas it was considered a crackpot goal in 2014, and it still is. There is no such thing as net zero. Net zero means the population has to drop by about 40%. And even then, it's not going to work because the scale on which this kind of energy production has to be built, it has to be built by the full population. And then 40% of the population has to kill itself. And then you only have 25 years. Because in 25 years, all those solar panels stop working. And the wind generators stop a long time before that. These reports are terrible synthesis of energy. It doesn't mean all the research is bad. But it means right now it's all rigged to lead to hostility toward fossil fuels. And that is going to kill nations. It's going to kill nations of people. We have third world and second world countries that were just barely getting to the point where they have paved roads and a way to take their trash out. And they're going to be plunged right back into a primitive state of disease and death and poverty. All that is being brought on by the green horsemen of the green energy movement. All right, let's see. We've got about just a few minutes left. I would like to talk about the consent of the governed because it's disappearing. The foundation of any government is the consent of the governed. If you don't have it, you basically have a slave state. A state in prison. Even totalitarian states ultimately depend on the consent of the governed. Some reasonable social behavior pattern where you don't have to march everybody to work at the point of a gun and then march them home and lock them in their room. It doesn't work. It can never work as a government. And it feels like the consent of the governed in the U.S. is slipping away. I do not consent. You do not consent. And the reason is so obvious that we dare not acknowledge it or discuss it. Those in power, elected and especially the unelected, they only give lip service to serving the public interest and common good, or they don't do it at all. They feign it. Beneath this flimsy facade of public relations, every single action serves the wealthy. It serves them. It serves their community and preys on us. We have no real say in the government because they write regulations that have the force of law. They assess our taxes. They take enforcement actions against us. They confiscate our stuff and steal our money. Except we have no representation in that government, and that is tyranny. You know it, and I know it. And they're legalizing things that are designed to keep us in a state of inebriation. They're legalizing cannabis. Please, just get stoned at night. You won't worry about it. You won't own anything, and you'll be happy. And this is patently false, and it's absurd. Millions of Americans die from alcohol and opioids, hundreds of thousands every year, while deaths attributed solely to cannabis, near zero. And yet the federal government and our elected representatives refuse to accept the reality that cannabis isn't equivalent to fentanyl and other synthetic opioids which continue to kill thousands every year. Why? Because it's the money. It's the money greasing the palms and the paychecks. We have people that we have sold Ivan and Roxy to, and they receive a letter from the post office that says the FDA has ordered them to seize and destroy their package. That's a lie. That's a lie. The FDA never ordered such a thing. I have it on their website. I have their web page attached to my web page. They absolutely do not order the seizure and destruction of these packages. The post office is doing it on their own, and it is illegal. It is a felony, and they will be prosecuted. So if you get that letter, you let me know. We'll send you another at our cost. My mission is to save lives, and we will get you your Ivan and Roxy. I guarantee it. Our government is losing the consent of the governed. So we're here every Wednesday, every Sunday at 8 p.m. My name is Brooks Agnew. This has been America Free Radio. Thank you so much for listening tonight. We'll see you Sunday night at 8 p.m. right here on America Free Radio. Peace, Earth Explorers.
Listening to Revolution